The key wouldn't turn. I stood there on my own front porch, duffel bag over my shoulder, staring at a lock I'd never seen before. 6 weeks installing security systems at a military base in Virginia, and I come home to this. My name is Jack Mallory. I'm 38, built like the Army engineer I used to be, and I run a small construction company in this forgotten corner of New England. The kind of guy who fixes things that are broken. Today, I was about to find out just how broken things could get. Having trouble, soldier boy? I turned. My wife Vanessa stood in the doorway, but she wasn't alone. 2 men flanked her, big guys in cheap suits trying to look intimidating. Behind them, through the window, I could see someone else moving around in my living room. "New locks, Jax," Vanessa said, her voice cold as January. She looked different. Hair shorter, makeup heavier, wearing clothes I'd never seen before. Expensive clothes. "This is my house now." I set down my bag slowly. "You have 5 seconds to explain what's going on here." She laughed, but it wasn't the laugh I'd married 12 years ago. This was something else entirely. "I'm explaining nothing to you. This house, the business, everything, it's mine now. You can pick up your things from the garage, what's left of them." One of the suits stepped forward. "You need to leave, buddy. Now." I looked at him. Really looked. Mid-20s, gym muscles, probably bounced at clubs on weekends. The kind of guy who thought size mattered more than training. "And you are?" "We're Ms. Mallory's security consultants," the other one said. Older, smarter, but still making the same mistake his partner was making. They thought I was just some blue-collar nobody they could push around. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. From across the street, I could see Mrs. Beale watching from her porch. 80-year-old widow who knew every piece of gossip in a 6-block radius. Whatever happened here would be all over town by dinner time. "Security consultants," I repeated. "For what? Afraid I might want to sleep in my own bed?" "You don't live here anymore," Vanessa said. "I filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. My lawyer says I have every right to change the locks for my own protection." "Protection from what?" She smiled then, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Pure malice. "From your anger issues, Jax. From your drinking. From your threats." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What threats?" "The ones you've been sending me. The texts, the voicemails. Really disturbing stuff." I pulled out my phone. "Show me these texts." I deleted them. Too upsetting to keep. The younger suit was getting antsy, bouncing on his feet like he wanted to start something. "Look, pal, you need to move along before this gets ugly." I turned to face him directly. "Before what gets ugly?" "Before we make you leave." I almost smiled. Almost. "You boys ever serve?" They exchanged glances. "What's that got to do with anything?" the older one asked. "Just wondering if you know the difference between someone who talks about violence and someone who's actually good at it." The younger one stepped closer. "You threatening us?" "Nope, just making an observation." That's when he grabbed my arm. What happened next took about 3 seconds. I twisted out of his grip, used his momentum to spin him around, and had him face first against the porch railing before his partner could blink. The older one reached for something inside his jacket, so I helped the younger one's face meet the railing a little harder than necessary, then stepped back. "Touch that gun, and I'll put you both in the hospital," I said quietly. "And before you get any ideas about how tough you are, you should know that Mrs. Beale over there has been filming this whole thing on her phone." I waved at Mrs. Beale, who waved back cheerfully. The younger guy was holding his nose, pressure building between his fingers. "You broke my nose." "No, I didn't. If I'd broken it, you'd be unconscious right now. This is just a love tap." Vanessa was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "You can't just assault people, Jax." "Assault?" He grabbed me first. "That's self-defense." Ask Mrs. Beale, she got it all on video. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. The driver's door opened and out stepped someone I recognized, Brent Harlow. Ex-cop turned private security contractor. We'd met a few times at city council meetings when I was bidding on municipal contracts. Problem here? Brent asked, walking up like he owned the place. Your boys need better training, I told him. And maybe health insurance. Brent looked at his bleeding employee, then at me. You always were a smart-ass, Mallory. And you always were a crooked cop. Guess some things never change. His face darkened. I think you better leave. Now. I think you better explain what you're doing in my house. It's not your house anymore, Vanessa said. Brent is my consultant. He's helping me with the transition. I looked at Brent, then at Vanessa, then back at Brent. The pieces were starting to fit together. Consultant, that what we're calling it? Watch your mouth, Brent warned. Or what? You'll sick your trained monkeys on me again? How'd that work out the first time? That's when I heard the sirens. Someone had called the cops. Probably Mrs. Beale, bless her heart. 2 patrol cars pulled up. Out stepped Detective Ray Keene, someone I knew from my Army days. We'd served together in Iraq before he came home and joined the police force. Jack, he said, nodding at me. Then he looked at the bleeding guy. What happened here? These gentlemen were explaining to me that I don't live in my own house anymore, I said. One of them got physical about it. Keene looked at Mrs. Beale, who was still holding her phone. Ma'am, did you see what happened? Oh, yes, officer. That young man grabbed Jack first. Jack was just defending himself. Very restrained, actually. In my day, someone grabbed you like that, they'd end up in the hospital. Keene looked at Brent. You want to press charges? Brent glanced at his injured employee, then at Mrs. Beale's phone, then at me. No, just a misunderstanding. Good, Keene said. Then I suggest everyone calm down and work this out like adults. He looked at me. Jack, you got somewhere to stay tonight? I nodded toward my detached garage. I'll make do. And ma'am, he said to Vanessa, you might want to handle this through lawyers rather than private security. Tends to work out better for everyone. After the cops left, after Brent and his wounded warriors drove away, Vanessa stood in the doorway of what used to be our home. This isn't over, Jax, she said. No, I agreed. It's not. She went inside and slammed the door. I picked up my duffel bag and walked around back to the garage. I had workspace there, a small apartment I'd built above it for when I worked late on projects. As I climbed the stairs, I was thinking about those texts she claimed I'd sent. About Brent Harlow being her consultant. About how much my life had just changed in the span of 10 minutes. I was also thinking about something my old drill sergeant used to say. When the enemy shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I unlocked the garage apartment and stepped inside. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And unlike the house, nobody had changed these locks. I dropped my bag and walked to the window that looked out over the backyard. Through the kitchen window of the main house, I could see Vanessa and Brent talking. She was animated, gesturing wildly. He was calm, nodding, occasionally touching her arm. That's when I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. There was a small camera mounted under the eaves of the house, pointed directly at the garage. A camera that hadn't been there when I left 6 weeks ago. They'd been watching me, or planning to. I pulled out my phone and called the only person I knew who could help me figure out what the hell was really going on. Eddie, it's Jack. I need you to come over and bring your electronics kit. What's wrong, boss? Everything, I said, still staring at that camera. Absolutely everything. Eddie Torino showed up 20 minutes later with a toolbox and a grin that disappeared the second he saw my face. Eddie's been my foreman for 8 years, a stocky Italian guy from South Boston who can wire anything, fix anything, and has never met a conspiracy theory he didn't like. Jesus, Jack, you look like someone stole your dog. Worse. Someone stole my life. I filled him in while he set up his equipment. Eddie's got degrees in electrical engineering and computer science, but he talks like he never left the neighborhood. It's a useful combination in our line of work. So let me get this straight, he said, pointing a signal detector at the house. Your wife locks you out, claims you sent threatening texts you never sent, and has her boyfriend's security goons try to rough you up? That's the short version. And now you want to know what kind of surveillance they got on you. I want to know everything. Every camera, every microphone, every piece of electronics they've planted. Eddie's detector started beeping as he aimed it at the camera under the eaves. Well, there's definitely something there. But Jack, he looked at me seriously. Whatever you're thinking of doing, you gotta be smart about it. These ain't amateurs we're dealing with. What do you mean? Brent Harlow's got a reputation. Word is he's got connections all over the city. Cops, judges, city council. He's the guy you call when you need something done quiet-like. You know him? Know of him. My cousin Sal did some electrical work for his security company last year. Said Harlow's got files on half the important people in town. Insurance, he called it. We spent the next 2 hours sweeping the garage apartment, clean. Then we moved to my truck, also clean. But when Eddie aimed his detector at the house itself, the thing went crazy. They got you wired for sound, boss. Cameras, audio, the works. Your bedroom, kitchen, living room. It's like a TV studio in there. How long would it take to install all that? Professional job? Maybe a week, if they had access. I thought about the business trip I'd taken a month before the military contract. 3 days in Hartford, bidding on a state job. Plenty of time. They've been planning this for a while, I said. Looks like it. Question is, what you gonna do about it? That's when my phone buzzed. Text message from a number I didn't recognize. Stay away from the house. This is your only warning. I showed it to Eddie. Well, that's not ominous at all. You gonna call the cops? And tell them what? My wife changed the locks and someone sent me a text? Keen's a good guy, but he's gotta follow the law. And right now, legally, I don't have a leg to stand on. Eddie packed up his equipment. So what's the plan? First, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Then I need to know why. And then, I looked at the house, at the camera pointed at us, at the life I'd built being dismantled by people who thought I was too stupid to fight back. Then I remind them why you should never underestimate an engineer with a grudge. The next morning, I drove to Murphy's Tavern on the east side of town. Murphy's is the kind of place where construction workers drink coffee at 6 a.m. and beer at 6 p.m., sometimes in the same cup. The bartender, Karen Mullins, has been there longer than the building and knows more secrets than the FBI. Jack Mallory, she said when I walked in. Heard you had some excitement yesterday. News travels fast in a small town. You could say that. Coffee? Please. She poured me a cup and leaned against the bar. Karen's in her 50s, tough as nails, and has been married 4 times. If anyone understood relationship warfare, it was her. So, what's the real story? She asked. I gave her the basics. She listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow. Brent Harlow, she said when I finished. Yeah, I know him. He comes in here sometimes with his crew. Big spender, likes to flash his roll. What else? He's been bragging lately. About some big score coming his way. New house, new business opportunities. Said he was about to upgrade his whole life. When was this? Couple weeks ago, right around the time your wife started coming in here. I nearly choked on my coffee. Vanessa comes here? Oh yeah, her and that friend of hers, Kendra something, real estate agent. They sit in the back booth, drink wine, talk about men. What kind of talk? Karen glanced around, then leaned closer. The kind where your wife complains about how you don't appreciate her, how she deserves better, how she's wasting her life with someone who has no ambition. She said that? Among other things. Also mentioned how you've got anger problems, drink too much. Maybe get physical sometimes. My hands tightened around the coffee cup. I've never laid a hand on her. I know that, Jack. Anyone who knows you knows that. But she's been telling that story to anyone who'll listen. Building a narrative. Exactly. And Brent's been backing her up, talking about how he's seen the bruises, how worried he is about her safety. I felt sick. They weren't just stealing my house and my business. They were destroying my reputation, making me out to be some kind of monster. There's more, Karen said. That friend of hers, Kendra? She was asking around about you. Wanted to know about your finances, your business contacts, whether you had any gambling debts or drug problems. Research. That's what I figured. Jack, these people are playing for keeps. Whatever they're planning, it's bigger than just a divorce. I finished my coffee and left a 10 on the bar. Karen, if anyone asks, we never had this conversation. What conversation? She said with a wink. I was halfway to my truck when I heard someone call my name. I turned to see Tyler Morrison, one of Brent's guys, walking toward me. Not one of the suits from yesterday. This was someone I knew from around town. We'd even worked together once on a city project. Jack, hey, got a minute? Sure, Tyler. What's up? He looked nervous, glancing around like he was afraid someone might be watching. Look, I want you to know, yesterday wasn't my idea. I wasn't even supposed to be there. But you were there. Yeah, I was, and I want to apologize for that. You're a good guy, Jack. You don't deserve what's happening to you. What exactly is happening to me, Tyler? He shifted uncomfortably. I can't get into details, but maybe you should think about leaving town for a while. Take a vacation, visit family, whatever. Just until things cool down. Things like what? I can't say more than that. But Jack, these people, they're not playing games. They've got lawyers, they've got connections, and they've got a plan. What kind of plan? Tyler looked around again, then stepped closer. The kind where you end up in jail or worse. I'm sorry, man. I really am. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in the parking lot with more questions than answers. That afternoon, I met Eddie at a coffee shop across town. He'd spent the morning doing research, and the look on his face told me it wasn't good news. Brent Harlow's got his fingers in everything, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Security contracts with the city, private investigation work, even some repo stuff. Guys connected. I flipped through the papers, financial records, business licenses, newspaper clippings. How'd you get all this? I got friends in low places. Point is, this guy's not just some ex-cop with a security business. He's got serious juice in this town. What about Vanessa? That's where it gets interesting. She's been real busy lately. Opened new bank accounts, got a business license for some kind of consulting firm, even put a down payment on a condo across town. With what money? That's the million-dollar question. Her salary at the HR firm wouldn't cover half of what she's been spending. But here's the kicker. She's been forging your signature on business documents. Eddie pulled out another set of papers. Contracts, loan applications, bank transfers, all with my signature, none of which I'd ever signed. She's been systematically looting your business accounts, Eddie said, moving money around, setting up shell companies, the whole 9 yards. And since you're married, it's all technically legal until a judge says otherwise. I stared at the documents, feeling a cold rage building in my chest. How much? Near as I can tell? About $80,000 so far. Maybe more. $80,000. Money I'd earned, money I'd saved, money I'd planned to use to expand the business. Gone. There's more, Eddie said. I did some digging on that Kendra woman. She's not just Vanessa's friend. She's her business partner. They registered a company together last month. Guess what kind of company? Tell me. Property management and acquisition. They're not just stealing your money, Jack. They're planning to steal your clients, too. I sat back in my chair, trying to process it all. It wasn't just personal, it was business. They were dismantling my entire life, piece by piece, and they'd been planning it for months. What about the surveillance equipment? I did some checking with my contacts at the electronic supply houses. Someone matching Brent's description bought about $5,000 worth of surveillance gear 3 weeks ago. Paid cash. 3 weeks ago. Right after I left for the military job. Timing's suspicious, I'll give you that. My phone buzzed. Another text from the same unknown number. Last warning. Leave town or face the consequences. I showed it to Eddie. They're getting nervous. Or they're getting ready to make their move. Jack, I think you need to go to the cops. With what? Circumstantial evidence and forged documents that might be legal anyway? They'd laugh me out of the station. So, what do you want to do? I looked at the papers spread across the table, at the evidence of months of planning and betrayal, at the systematic destruction of everything I'd worked for. I want to know exactly what they're planning, I said, and then I want to stop them. How? I smiled for the first time in 2 days. The same way I used to defuse bombs in Iraq, very carefully and with a lot of attention to detail. Eddie grinned back. Now you're talking my language, boss. What do you need? Everything you can find on Brent Harlow, Vanessa, and Kendra. Financial records, business dealings, personal relationships, the works. And Eddie? Yeah. This time, we're not playing defense. That night, Eddie and I sat in his van across from Brent's security office, a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. The building was dark except for a single light in what looked like an office on the second floor. Motion sensors on the doors, cameras on the corners, Eddie said, studying the building through binoculars. But the parking lot's got blind spots. We're not breaking in, I told him. We're just watching. For what? Patterns. Everyone's got them. We'd been there for 2 hours when a black SUV pulled into the lot. Brent got out, followed by Tyler and another guy I didn't recognize. They went inside and the lights came on in several offices. Working late, Eddie observed. Or planning something. At 11:30 they came back out, but this time they had company, Vanessa and Kendra. Even from across the street, I could see Vanessa was dressed to destroy. Designer clothes, jewelry, the works. Not exactly what you'd wear to a business meeting. Celebration? Eddie asked. Maybe. Or maybe they're finalizing whatever they've been planning. The group stood in the parking lot for several minutes, talking and laughing. Then Brent pulled Vanessa aside for what looked like a private conversation. When they rejoined the group, she was smiling like she'd just won the lottery. I got a bad feeling about this, Eddie said. That's when my phone rang. Detective Keene. Jack, where are you right now? Home. Why? Someone just reported seeing your truck near a break-in on Maple Street. You want to tell me what's going on? I looked at Eddie, who was already starting the van. Ray, I'm nowhere near Maple Street. I'm at home and I can prove it. How? Give me 10 minutes and I'll show you. We drove back to my place and I called Keene from the garage apartment. I'm here. You want to come check? Already on my way. Keene showed up 5 minutes later along with another officer. They looked around the apartment, checked my truck, and took some notes. Truck's cold, Keene said. Engine hasn't been running for hours. And your neighbor confirms she saw you come home around 8. What happened on Maple Street? Someone broke into a house, trashed the place. Neighbor said they saw a truck that looked like yours leaving the scene. What kind of house? Rental property. Belongs to some real estate company. Keene checked his notes. Kendra Morrison Properties. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. They're setting me up. Who's setting you up? I told him about the surveillance, the forged documents, the systematic theft of my business assets. Keene listened without interrupting, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. Jack, what you're describing sounds like a pretty elaborate conspiracy. Because it is a conspiracy. You got any proof? I'm working on it. Keen sighed. Look, I believe you didn't break into that house, but you need to be careful. Someone's playing games, and you're in the middle of it. Don't give them any ammunition. After he left, Eddie and I sat in the apartment, trying to piece together what had just happened. They used a truck that looks like yours to break into Kendra's own property, Eddie said. Why? Insurance fraud, maybe. Or they needed it to look like I was escalating things, getting desperate. For what? I don't know yet. But whatever they're building toward, it's big. The next morning, I got my answer. I was having coffee at Murphy's when Karen waved me over to the bar. You need to see this, she said, showing me her phone. It was a Facebook post from Vanessa, dated that morning. I never thought I'd be writing this, but I need help. My husband has become increasingly unstable and threatening. Last night he broke into my friend's house, and I'm afraid of what he might do next. If anyone sees Jack Mallory, please don't approach him. He's not the man I married, and I'm genuinely scared for my safety. The post had already been shared dozens of times, with comments ranging from sympathetic to outright hostile. Someone had even posted a photo of my truck with the license plate visible. She's destroying your reputation, Karen said. That's the point. Make me look like a dangerous lunatic so no one questions what happens next. What happens next? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was my biggest client, the one who accounted for about 30% of my annual revenue. Jack, I just saw something online about you. We need to talk. Mr. Patterson, whatever you saw, I'm sorry, Jack, but we can't have our company associated with any kind of domestic violence situation. We're going to have to suspend our contract pending resolution of your personal issues. The line went silent. Within an hour, I got 3 more calls, 3 more clients, 3 more suspended contracts. By noon, I'd lost 60% of my business. I was sitting in the garage apartment, staring at my phone, when Eddie burst in. Boss, we got problems. Big problems. Bigger than losing most of my clients? Yeah. I just got a call from my cousin Sal, the one who worked for Brent's company. He says Brent's been asking around about you. Specifically, he wanted to know if you had access to any kind of explosives or weapons from your army days. What did Sal tell him? Nothing, because he doesn't know anything. But Jack, why would Brent be asking questions like that unless he was planning to plant something on you? The pieces were starting to come together, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. They're not just trying to steal my money and ruin my reputation. They're trying to frame me for something. Something big enough to put you away for a long time. Or worse. That afternoon, I decided it was time to go on the offense. I drove to the construction site where we were building a small office complex, a job that was supposed to run through the end of the year. If I was going to lose everything anyway, I might as well make it count. I wasn't surprised to find Brent's SUV parked behind the job site trailer. What did surprise me was finding Tyler Morrison trying to plant something under the dashboard of my work truck. Find what you're looking for? I asked. Tyler spun around, a small plastic bag in his hand. Even from 10 feet away, I could see the white powder inside. Jack! I wasn't... You weren't planting drugs in my truck? Because that's sure what it looks like. It's not what you think. What I think is that you're working for people who are trying to destroy my life. What I think is that you're about to become an accessory to a felony. Tyler looked around desperately, probably hoping Brent would show up to help him, but the parking lot was empty except for us. They made me do it, he said. They said if I didn't help them, they'd make sure I never worked in this town again. Who made you do it? Brent? Brent and your wife. They've got this whole plan worked out. They were going to call in an anonymous tip, have the cops search your truck, find the drugs. And then what? Then you'd be arrested, and while you were dealing with that, they'd take over your business completely. All legal-like, since she's your wife and you'd be in jail. I looked at the bag in his hand, at the fear in his eyes, At the surveillance camera I'd had Eddie install on the job site last week. Tyler, you know what the penalty is for planting drugs on someone? I know. But they said, I don't care what they said. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me that bag, you're going to tell me everything you know about their plan, and then you're going to disappear before I decide to call the cops. I can't. They'll destroy me. They'll have to get in line. Tyler looked at me for a long moment, then handed over the bag. It's not real drugs. It's baking soda and baby powder. They figured it would be enough to get you arrested, and by the time the lab results came back, it wouldn't matter. What else? They've been monitoring your phone calls, your emails, everything. They know about your friend Eddie. They know about the surveillance equipment you've been using. They're always one step ahead because they're listening to everything you do. That explained a lot. What's the end game, Tyler? Tomorrow night. They're planning to stage some kind of confrontation at your house. Make it look like you attacked your wife or threatened her with a weapon. Brent's got it all worked out. He'll be there as a witness, maybe even have to defend her from you. And then? Then you're either gone or behind bars, and they get everything. Your house, your business, your money, all of it. I felt a cold calm settle over me. Tyler, you're going to do exactly what I tell you to do. And if you even think about double-crossing me, I'll make sure that surveillance footage of you planting drugs in my truck ends up in the hands of every cop in the state. What do you want me to do? First, you're going to tell Brent that you planted the drugs successfully. Then you're going to help me turn their plan against them. How? I smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. By giving them exactly what they want, and more than they bargained for. The next evening, I sat in my garage apartment, waiting. Eddie was positioned across the street with a camera and a radio. Mrs. Beale was at her kitchen window. I'd asked her to keep an eye out for unusual activity and call the police if she saw anything concerning. At 8:30, right on schedule, Brent's SUV pulled up in front of the house. Vanessa got out of the passenger side, followed by Brent and another man I didn't recognize. They walked up to the front door like they owned the place, which legally they probably did. My phone rang. Vanessa. Jack, we need to talk. About what? About ending this. I'm willing to be reasonable, but you need to stop harassing me and my friends. I haven't harassed anyone. The break-in at Kendra's house, the threats, the stalking. It has to stop. I didn't break into anything, and you know it. I know you're angry, and I understand why, but this isn't the way to handle it. Through the window, I could see her standing in the front yard, phone to her ear, while Brent and his friend positioned themselves near the garage. What do you want, Vanessa? I want you to come outside so we can talk face to face. Like adults. So your boyfriend can have another shot at me? Brent's here for protection. You've been making threats. I haven't made any threats. The texts, Jack. The voicemails. You can't keep denying it. That's when I realized what was happening. They weren't just trying to lure me outside. They were recording the conversation. Building evidence for whatever story they planned to tell the police. Vanessa, I never sent you any threatening texts or voicemails. But I'll tell you what, I'll come outside if you agree to let Detective Keene mediate the conversation. That's not necessary. Then we don't have anything to talk about. I hung up and immediately called Keene. Ray, I need you at my house. Now. What's going on? The confrontation I've been expecting. They're here, and they're trying to provoke something. On my way. 5 minutes later, I heard shouting from the backyard. I looked out to see Brent trying to force open the side door of the garage, the door I'd rigged with Eddie's help. The paint bomb went off perfectly. Bright pink paint exploded all over Brent, covering him from head to toe. He stumbled backward, cursing and wiping paint from his eyes. What the hell? He shouted. I opened the apartment window. That's called a security system. You're trespassing. Vanessa came running around the side of the house. When she saw Brent covered in pink paint, She started laughing despite herself. "It's not funny," Brent yelled. "He booby-trapped the building." "Actually," I called down, "I secured my property against unlawful entry." Perfectly legal. That's when the police cars arrived. 2 of them, with Detective Keene in the lead. He took one look at Brent, covered in pink paint, and had to work hard not to smile. "Someone want to explain what's going on here?" "He assaulted me," Brent said, pointing at the garage apartment. "With paint? He booby-trapped his building." Keene looked at me. "Jack, you want to explain this?" "Someone was trying to break into my garage. I installed a security device to prevent theft. Non-lethal, no permanent damage, and it only activates if someone tries to force the door." "He was trespassing," Vanessa said. "Brent was just checking to make sure Jack wasn't hiding weapons or drugs in there." "Ma'am, unless you have a search warrant, no one has the right to search anyone else's property." The third man, who'd been quiet until now, stepped forward. "Detective, I'm Robert Chase, Ms. Mallory's attorney. My client has reason to believe her husband is storing illegal substances and possibly weapons in that garage." "Based on what evidence?" "Anonymous tips, credible sources." Keene looked at me. "Jack, you mind if we take a look?" "Not at all." I came down and opened the garage. Inside was my workshop, some construction equipment, and Eddie's electronics gear. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous. "Satisfied?" I asked. Chase whispered something to Vanessa, who nodded. "Detective, we'd like to file a complaint. My client has been the victim of ongoing harassment and intimidation." "What kind of harassment?" "Threatening texts and voicemails, stalking, property damage." "Property damage?" "The break-in at her friend's house." Keene looked at me. "Jack, we already established you weren't involved in that." "Nevertheless," Chase said, "my client feels threatened and wants a restraining order." "Based on what evidence?" Chase pulled out a folder. Text messages, voicemails, documentation of erratic behavior. Keene looked through the papers. "These texts, they're from an unknown number. My client believes they're from her husband. Believing and proving are 2 different things." That's when Mrs. Beale came shuffling across the street, carrying her phone. "Excuse me, officer, but I've been recording this whole thing, and I think you should see this." She showed Keene her phone. On the screen was video of Brent trying to break into the garage, with clear audio of him saying, "Once we get inside and plant the stuff, we can call it in." Chase's face went white. That video was taken illegally, without consent. "Ma'am," Keene said to Mrs. Beale, "were you on your own property when you recorded this?" "Oh, yes, officer." I was standing in my own kitchen, looking out my own window. "Then it's perfectly legal." Keene looked at Brent, who was still dripping pink paint. "Mr. Harlow, you want to explain what you meant by plant the stuff." That's taken out of context." "What context would make that sound legal?" That's when Tyler Morrison came walking up the street. I'd told him to wait until the police arrived, then come forward with what he knew. "Detective Keene? I need to report a crime." "What kind of crime?" Tyler looked at Brent, then at Vanessa, then at me. "Conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted evidence tampering." He pulled out the bag of fake drugs. "They asked me to plant this in Jack's truck. Said it was part of some plan to frame him." Chase started backing toward his car. "I think we're done here." "Actually," Keene said, "I think we're just getting started. Mr. Harlow, Ms. Mallory, I'm going to need you both to come down to the station for questioning." "Are we under arrest?" Vanessa asked. "Not yet. But the night is young." As they led Brent and Vanessa away, Chase tried one last desperate move. "Detective, my client is the victim here. She's been living in fear." "Counselor," Keene interrupted, "your client just got caught on video discussing planting evidence. I'd suggest you focus on damage control rather than making more accusations." After everyone left, I sat on my front porch with Mrs. Beale. She was grinning like she'd just won the lottery. That was better than my stories, she said. You should have seen that man's face when the paint exploded. Mrs. Beale, I owe you dinner. Nonsense. I should be thanking you. This is the most excitement we've had in this neighborhood in years. Eddie came jogging across the street. Boss, please tell me you got that all on video too. Every second of it. What happens now? I looked at the house, at the pink paint splattered on the side of the garage, at the life I'd been fighting to save. Now we finish it. 3 days later, I was sitting in Murphy's Tavern when Kendra Morrison walked in. She looked around nervously before spotting me at the bar and walking over. Jack, we need to talk. About what? About ending this war before it destroys everyone. Karen poured her a wine without being asked. Apparently Kendra was a regular. I didn't start this war, I told her. Maybe not, but you can end it. Vanessa's willing to make a deal. What kind of deal? You drop all charges, stop cooperating with the police investigation, and she'll give you a clean divorce. You keep the business, she keeps the house. And Brent? Brent's finished. His security license is under review, half his clients have dropped him, and he's facing criminal charges. He's not part of any deal. I sipped my beer. What about the money she stole? What money? The $80,000 she embezzled from my business accounts. Kendra shifted uncomfortably. I don't know anything about that. Sure you don't. You were just the real estate agent who helped her set up shell companies and launder the money. I think you're confused. Am I? I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Kendra's voice clear as day. The beauty of this plan is that by the time he figures out what's happening, we'll have moved all the money offshore. Kendra's face went pale. Where did you get that? Your business partner's not as smart as she thinks she is. She's been recording all your conversations as insurance in case things went south, which they have. That's illegal wiretapping. Actually, it's not. Massachusetts is a two-party consent state for phone calls, but only one party needs to consent for in-person conversations. And since Vanessa was recording her own conversations, I shrugged. Kendra looked around the bar like she was trapped. What do you want? I want my money back, all of it, plus interest. I don't have that kind of cash. Then you better figure out how to get it, because the alternative is prison. She left without finishing her wine. Karen watched her go, then turned to me. You really got recordings of them planning all this? Hours of them. Eddie's good with electronics, but he's even better with psychology. He figured out how to hack Vanessa's phone and turn on the recording function remotely. Is that legal? Probably not. But it doesn't matter, because I'm not planning to use them in court. What are you planning? I finished my beer and left a 20 on the bar. I'm planning to give this town something to talk about. The next day was Saturday, which meant the weekly farmers' market in the town square. Half the population would be there, along with local news crews covering the community spirit angle. I set up a small booth between the organic vegetable stand and the handmade jewelry display. My sign read, "The truth about domestic abuse, free information." Within an hour, I had a crowd. I'd brought copies of everything, the forged documents, the surveillance photos, the financial records showing the systematic theft of my business assets. But the real draw was the laptop playing audio recordings. This is Vanessa Mallory, I announced to the growing crowd, explaining to her business partner how they planned to frame me for domestic abuse. Vanessa's voice came through the speakers. The key is making him look unstable. A few fake bruises, some tears for the camera, and everyone will believe he's been hitting me. Men like Jack think they're so smart, but they never see emotional manipulation coming. The crowd was getting bigger. Someone had called the local news, and I could see reporters setting up cameras. And here's Brent Harlow, I continued, discussing how they plan to plant evidence in my truck. Brent's voice. Once we get him arrested on drug charges, she can claim he was dealing to support his habit. That'll explain where all the money went and give her grounds to take everything in the divorce. People were taking pictures, recording videos with their phones, sharing everything on social media in real time. By noon, #Vanessa Mallory was trending locally. That's when the police showed up. Detective Keene walked over to my booth, shaking his head. "Jack, what are you doing?" "Exercising my First Amendment rights. Everything here is public record or legally obtained evidence. You're causing a scene. I'm telling the truth. If that causes a scene, maybe the problem isn't with me." Keene looked at the crowd, at the reporters, at the audio still playing from my laptop. "You know this is going to make things harder for the prosecution, right? Defense attorneys love it when evidence gets contaminated by publicity. I'm not interested in prosecution. I'm interested in justice. What's the difference? Prosecution means they might go to jail. Justice means everyone knows who they really are." That's when I saw Vanessa pushing through the crowd, her face red with anger. Behind her were Kendra and a man I didn't recognize, probably another lawyer. "Turn that off!" Vanessa shouted. "You have no right to broadcast private conversations." "Actually, I do. These recordings were made with the consent of at least one party to each conversation. I never consented to anything." "No, but you made them. Every one of these recordings came from your own phone, which you set to automatically record conversations as a backup system." The new lawyer stepped forward. "Mr. Mallory, I'm advising you to cease this activity immediately or face legal consequences." "What legal consequences? Everything I'm sharing is either public record or evidence in an ongoing criminal investigation. You're defaming my clients. I'm playing their own words. If they find their own words defamatory, that's not my problem." The crowd was loving it. Someone shouted, "Let him finish." Others started chanting, "Play it all." Vanessa looked around at the faces in the crowd, people she'd have to see at the grocery store, at work, at social events for years to come. People who now knew exactly what kind of person she really was. "You're destroying my life," she said, tears starting to flow. "No," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm revealing the life you chose to live." There's a difference. That's when Brent showed up, still bearing faint traces of pink paint in his hair. He pushed through the crowd like he was going to start something, but stopped when he saw the cameras. "This is harassment," he yelled. "This man is a stalker and a criminal." "Actually," Detective Keene said, "this man is a victim of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted evidence tampering. You, on the other hand, are looking at some serious charges. I want him arrested." "For what? Telling the truth in a public place?" I turned up the volume on the laptop. A new recording started playing. Brent and Vanessa discussing how they'd been planning this for months, how they'd researched my finances, my business relationships, even my military record, looking for weaknesses to exploit. "The beauty of it," Brent's voice said, "is that no one ever suspects the wife. Domestic abuse allegations destroy men's lives, and there's no coming back from it. Even if the charges get dropped, people always wonder." The crowd was getting ugly now. Someone threw something at Brent, looked like a tomato from the organic stand. Others were shouting questions at Vanessa, demanding to know how she could do such things to her own husband. "This is my house now," I said, speaking directly to Vanessa. "These are my friends, my neighbors, my community. You tried to take all of that away from me, but you forgot something important." "What?" "The truth has a way of coming out. And in a town this size, reputation is everything." Vanessa looked around at the hostile faces, at the cameras recording her every reaction, at the complete destruction of the life she'd tried to steal from me. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but I don't hate you. I pity you." She turned and pushed through the crowd, followed by Kendra and their lawyer. Brent started to follow them, but someone in the crowd blocked his path. "Hey, aren't you the guy who got covered in pink paint?" a teenager asked, holding up his phone to record. Brent's face turned red. "Get that camera out of my face." "It's a public place, dude." First Amendment, right? That's when Brent lost it completely. He grabbed for the kid's phone, missed, and ended up stumbling into the jewelry display. Handmade necklaces and bracelets went flying as Brent crashed to the ground. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Someone started chanting, "Pink paint! Pink paint!" Others joined in until half the square was chanting. Detective Keene helped Brent to his feet. "I think you better leave," he said quietly. "This isn't over," Brent said, looking at me. "Yeah, it is," I replied. "It's been over since the moment you thought you could outsmart an army engineer. You just didn't know it yet." As the crowd dispersed and the reporters packed up their equipment, I sat on the steps of City Hall with Eddie and Mrs. Beale. "So what happens now?" Eddie asked. "Now I rebuild my business, fix my reputation, and get on with my life." "What about them?" "What about them?" "Vanessa's unemployed, facing criminal charges, and can't show her face in this town without people whispering. Brent's lost his license, most of his clients, and he's about to be a convicted felon. Kendra's real estate business is finished. Who's going to trust an agent who helps people commit fraud?" Mrs. Beale patted my arm. "You did good, Jack." Sometimes people need to face consequences for their actions. "I just gave them what they wanted," I said. "They wanted everyone to know who I really was." Mission accomplished. 3 months later, I was sitting in my living room, in my house with my name on the deed, when the phone rang. It was Detective Keene. "Thought you'd want to know," he said. "Vanessa pled guilty to fraud and conspiracy charges. She got 3 years probation and has to pay full restitution." "What about Brent?" 2 years in county jail, plus he lost his private investigator's license permanently. Tyler Morrison got community service for cooperating." "And Kendra?" "Lost her real estate license and had to pay a $50,000 fine to the state. She's working at a call center now." I looked around the house I'd almost lost, at the business I'd rebuilt, at the life I'd fought to save. "Ray, thanks for everything. Just doing my job. But Jack?" "Yeah?" "Next time someone tries to steal your life, maybe call me before you stage a public humiliation in the town square." I laughed. "There won't be a next time." I learned my lesson. What lesson is that? Never underestimate the power of the truth. And always, always trust your neighbors to do the right thing when they know what's really going on. After I hung up, I walked out to the front porch and sat in the chair I'd bought to replace the one Vanessa had taken. Mrs. Beale was in her garden, Eddie was working on his truck in his driveway, and Karen from Murphy's was walking her dog. Normal life. The life I'd almost lost to people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I pulled out my phone and deleted the last of the recordings I'd made. I didn't need them anymore. Justice had been served, not in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. In a small town where everyone knows everyone else's business, that's the only court that really matters. The house was mine. The business was mine. My reputation was not just restored, but stronger than ever. This was my house now, and it always would be. 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 It always would be.